Good morning, everyone. It's Yvonne here. How are you all going? Hope you're all keeping well. I've just come back in from doing gardening, so I was just about to go and have a shower, and I thought, no, I'll just do this before I go, and then I'll go and enjoy my shower. Um, I hope that everybody's doing well. I did have a few questions that came up yesterday on my YouTube channel, and I thought I'd spend a little bit of time this morning talking about the couple of things people asked me, being that I did say if there was something you wanted to know more about. Now, one thing that people are finding, hey, how you going, Sarah, Scott, Haley? Good morning, Haley. How are you? Thank you, Scott. That was a lovely greeting. I had someone yesterday talking about how do I control when it's my body and that's what I do. And I think people are losing sort of a little bit of a concept of what. Oh, how you going? How are you, Lenore? Um, and I thought I'd just talk to you about control, because when people say control, I guess what I'm meaning by control and what people thinking is control are probably a little bit different. So when we say hey, Joanne, I am well, thank you, Haley, I'm fabulous. When we talk about control, we talk about on a day-to-day basis, we control our bodies, we control where we want to go, we control whether we go to the shops. If we're talking mentally, I'd probably liken that more to having your power or living in your power. When I talk about not controlling, I come from the perspective of you cannot foretell the future. So control becomes irrelevant because we don't know what's going to happen down the track. And when the universal spirit talked to me about control, what they were saying was, you cannot build your own future. You can wish for your future. You can put out there what you'd like to see in your future, but you cannot control the outcome. So at the end of the day, control becomes a thing that we have to allow the universe to do for us. We can put the intention out there. We can ask for what we want, but once we've asked for it, we have to move aside and let spirit do the work. Now, sometimes we ask for something and it may, hey, Beatrix, how are you going? Sometimes we may have to step aside and wait for something to come to us. And sometimes the universe decides maybe that's not part of your path. But the other thing that happens a little bit too is we get what we want, but it's not quite the way we wanted it, which happens a lot. So I guess at the end of the day, it depends on whether you see, hey, Elizabeth, how you going? Good evening. It depends on how you see your world a little bit too. Because if you think you have that much control and, hey, Susan, how you going? And you feel that you can just cling on to things for that, till you go blue in the face, then you're probably going to create stagnation rather than movement. So when you're trying to control every little detail of how things work out in your life, then perhaps what will happen is the universe ends up slowing that down. And yes, that's very good, Beatrice. Very good way to put it. We have to let go of control. Now, if people are trying to sort of understand the need to control, absolutely. Haley, we're all learning to do it. Like I say to you many, many times on here, you're not talking to someone here, who's got everything down pat. I just don't. I'm working on it all too. So my understanding from what spirit, and I take a lot of my messages from spirit, as I've always done, and very often they show me what they're talking about in pictures because I don't always understand what they're trying to get across. The need for control becomes something that is very very intentional for us. So we try to envisage what we want, and instead of allowing just then for things to just flow through, depends on what sort of philosophy you're following. Once you let go and allow the universe to do what it needs to do, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's the underlying spirit of manifestation. So if you're trying to drive that every day, so say, for example, this will be a really good one for you guys. You want to be with someone, totally in love with someone. You want to spend every waking moment with them. That's all you can think about. So every day you spend your time thinking about them, thinking how they may come in, thinking how they may give you a date, thinking how they may contact you, and you're constantly thinking about that. You're not giving room for the universe to manifest what you want. So the idea is you let go of that control. That is control. I want this, I want it bad. How can I bring it in? What can I do with it? How do I make it happen? And then you realize that all you're doing is thinking. All of your energy, all of your manifestation powers, all of the things you need to manifest an outcome are all going into that thinking energy. So what you have to do, it is hard. And yes, Sarah, I get it. And I stamp in my feet right there with you. But I'm learning and it can be done. So I want to reassure you it can be done and it does take work. And the first bit of work that really, funnily enough, and that's exactly right, Beatrice. I agree with you 100%. We're looking at we're trying to control something thinking we've got charge of the universe and we don't. You can't make someone love you. It doesn't matter how much love you put into that person, you cannot make them love you. You have to just love them and allow them to go of the outcome. You can't control the outcome. And the way I learned to do it was by releasing the past. That was my biggest lesson. So because we live in the past, what happens is we have certain feelings and emotions we attach to events in the past. So we strongly cling to those attachments. We hang on to them and they become part of how we move into our future. So we're clinging to something that we felt good about, that we attached an emotion to. Sometimes this can be not good as well. It may be a very negative emotion, but you've attached yourself to it. And then what you've got is this past attachment holding you here. So you start to visualize how you want that to come out in the future. And that's not always how it comes out. So what you need to do is release this attachment to the past. And that will allow you then to sort of move into the future in a better flow. So the trick is not to try and stop controlling the future per se, but more to release the past. Now that is difficult. So trying to release the past is a challenge because, as I said, we've attached emotion to what we're feeling. So we have to come back to the emotion. We have to become the observer. So when we're thinking about a past event and it starts to create that emotion within us, we have to stop. We have to acknowledge the emotion and then we have to release it. It's the past, it's gone. It is not serving no good to you anymore. So if you observe it, you're learning the lesson, you're moving onwards. So the releasing of the past is a hard thing. And the way to do that best, as I always say to people, is around meditation. So, Lauren, the stop thinking thing, you can do it, absolutely, but it takes discipline. It takes hard discipline to understand how to release. And I always talk about, yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Beatrice, I hope you don't mind me saying that if people aren't reading it. It says, we are a mirror outside of our inside. The as within, so without. We love ourselves and then love comes back at us like a Dharma boomerang. We just don't know how exactly and we don't need to know how. But the loving yourself, releasing the past, all those things that you think you are or you think you are not, all those experiences you've had or you want to release, that is where you start. So going back and just when the feelings come up or when the thoughts come up or when the emotions emerge, you have to stop for a moment and be conscious of those emotions. What are those emotions? What am I feeling in this moment? How do I just release that? And you know what? Acknowledging it is half the battle. Because once you stop and you go, I'm really angry at the moment. I'm angry I can't have that person. I'm angry I can't be in that situation. You know, I'm working so hard, but I'm not bringing in what I want. What is going on? And those emotions in that moment, you have to acknowledge, why am I feeling like that? What is it about this person, this situation, this idea, this thought, this memory that keeps me trapped here? What is it? What do I want from this? And once you acknowledge that, you acknowledge the feeling, you acknowledge the idea, it often just releases by itself. And I think this is what people don't realize because they get into that thought, that feeling and emotion, and they just allow it to run around and around and around until you're exhausted. And that is half of what you need to be doing. So meditation's really good. If you want to read books, I always talk about Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, because that taught me how to live in the moment. And that was probably about 20 years ago when I learned that first, maybe over 20 years ago, actually. And I agree with you, Beatrice. You have so many wise things to say. Blocked emotions are energetic blocks, but people don't realize that. But the thing is, it's not hard to get rid of once you understand it. It's only stopping. Absolutely. So, Lauren, yes, very good. So, okay, beautiful. And Elizabeth, you're so spot on with this. So, you guys know how to do it. So, Lauren, when you're thinking about something, what happens is the memory comes in. Okay, I remember falling over when I was a child and hurting my head. I know I was really upset. Hey, Kay, how you going? I know I was really upset because I remember crying. I remember being really angry because nobody came and helped me. I remember feeling really lost because I was bleeding. I didn't know what was going on. So all of those emotions, anger, loss, loss of security, all of those things are in that moment. And what we do is we bottle that emotion. So later on, we see someone fall over, immediately all those emotions come in because that is the memory we have. So we immediately go to that. So when you're thinking about something, if you think of loss, often all of those memories you've got are all sitting within that loss that you've had. So when you start thinking about it, your heart might race. You may get that horrible feeling. Some of this stuff is PTSD, but I won't go into that at the moment because that's just way complex. But some of those feelings you've got, you attach to that memory. And then later on, something small happens and you grab all of those old emotions and you throw them all in together. And you have to stop and go, why am I feeling this way? This may only be a very little event, but I'm reliving all of these other events with it. Now, for some of you, when it's around relationship, it may be about rejection or abandonment or attachment to something. Maybe somehow or another you feel rejected by a person. So that rejection then reflects all the rejection you've had in your life. So you are feeling all of those emotions right there. Sorry, I'm reading Beatrice's comments here. It's beautiful. Oh, that's very nice. I visualize these blocks as ice and warm it to make it melt, you mean? She says that afterwards. I'm not ridiculing. Emotions are water that got frozen. Yeah, they are. They get frozen in time. So what happens is later on down the track, when something happens, like somebody you perceive rejects you, you bring back all your emotions around reject. You don't just think of that one particular thing. You bring back all of the emotions because they're all sort of, you've retained them all. So what you have to do is when you, see, when you say you tell yourself off for thinking this crap, no, don't tell yourself. Why are you telling yourself off for thinking about it? What you have to do is you acknowledge. I mean, you can do it in a very practical way. You can say, you can say to your mind, thank you very much for sending in that thought. I appreciate that you've shown me that, and now I can let it go. But don't do it. I did it a lot with my anger. And I think I've talked to you about this before because I had always said to people I didn't feel angry. I never seemed to get angry. Nothing seemed to really make me feel angry. I could remember probably getting angry a couple of times in my life where I really spat it. And I felt so guilty and humiliated and ashamed of myself after I'd done it. And that was really something I'd worked on for a really long time. And I remember when I started to release the emotions around anger, I started to go, why am I angry? What's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this? And then I think, hang on a moment. So now when I get angry, I may get angry that's not related to that particular situation. So I acknowledge the fact that I feel angry. I go, well, I'm feeling really angry at the moment. Is there a reason for why I'm feeling angry? It's okay, Yvonne. You have every right to be angry. Acknowledge. And then you know what? When you do that, it's like one of those air bubbles. It goes poof, and the anger's gone because you've seen it. You've not attached every other situation to it. Ah, beautiful question, Winter. I could keep you going forever on this one because and this is my thought and view, okay? And I've argued with people to the nth degree on this one. Because we've been taught that we have free will. So I studied some philosophy and social science. So I thought a lot about people's, and psychology, sorry. So I thought a lot about people's concepts around free will and destiny. Um, and sometimes we bundle both in together and we think that you're very welcome, Lauren. If you have any more issue or problem with that, let me know and I'll give you some more tips on how to work with it. So yeah, see, there you go. Beautiful, Sarah. Don't let me lose track of Winter's question. When my twin rejected me, every rejection from my childhood and entire life came to the fore. I had to deal with it and heal. That's abandonment. That is rejection, abandonment, attachment. And as adults, we have a lot of attachments that we formed in childhood. But again, big conversation. We'll get back to that one day. What I want to talk about quickly, though, is this Winter's beautiful question around, do I believe in destiny or free will? So I think free will is actually a humanized concept of what we encounter. And I don't want to get too philosophical about it. But somebody said to me one day, but what happens if I choose not to do that? And I said, well, maybe that was what was destined for you. And they said, but what if I change my mind then and take the other thing? I was like, well, maybe that's what you were destined to do. Yeah, but maybe if later on down the track I choose to do this, maybe that's what you were destined to do. It's an argument that I can go round and round on with you. I guess my thing is I believe in destiny. I believe if it's meant to be on your path, if it's meant to come to you, it will. If it doesn't come to you, then you weren't supposed to have it. If you had free will, you could make it happen. If I had free will, I could make someone buy me a house and, and take me round the world on a world trip. Where does the question really have an answer? So it's very much a personal thing. But for me, I know from I guess the work I've done and the things I've seen over the years, if it's meant for you, it will come. It's written on your pathway. And that's what the Akashic records teach us, that your destiny is already pre-written before you come to Earth. Those are my beliefs personally. You do not have to believe them. Hey, Melanie, how are you? So it's a very personal thing, what you believe, but I could argue with you for a very long time on what is free will and what is destiny. And the other thing I want to talk about too, which is really interesting because it sort of loosely ties into this. Somebody asked me about feeling invisible because I'd mentioned one time on my channel, and obviously, things tweak. I can't click my fingers, sorry. Things sort of tweak for people and they say, but can you talk a little bit more on that? When you're a child, if you have parents who are inconsistent in the parenting, which is what we talk about with attachment and also abandonment. If you have parents who are inconsistent parenters, so, I think we've all done this with our own children. There's no blame here. I'm not sort of taking anybody. Yeah, it's nice to see you too, Melanie. I don't know which way you were raised, and you could have had good parents, but they may have been inconsistent. I think about the way I parented, and I think, well, if I could have gone back and done it differently, I would have done. But I was quite a tough parent. But I loved very deeply my children. I loved them very deeply and I was very protective of them. In fact, I wished sometimes I would have allowed them to fly a little bit more, but I was scared of the world because my world growing up was very scary. So if you have, and I mean, my story is very deep and I won't get into that because it will take half the day to explain it all that to you, but you're welcome, Winter. We could talk about that more though. So I guess as a child, if you try to gain or get love from people. You will do everything in your power to make people love you because you want to be accepted. It's a normal thing. So if you've got a parent showing you love that is non-conditional, then you feel loved. You don't feel that you have to try to be loved. Now, I don't know whether it was because I had quite a lot of siblings. I have, as I said, quite a complex story around my childhood, but I guess what happened for me was I always felt that I didn't get the love that I needed to be who I was. So I became a very gentle, I pushed aside all my anger and emotions, and I became a child that tried to please. And I can remember sometimes in my life being really talked about as being like the good girl, being the child, like I would do things, go beyond, just so I could get that recognition, that love, that whatever it was that I needed to be who I was, that I didn't feel that I was receiving. And unless I was being that person, I got ignored. So, in order for me to get that, I think I had to work hard to get it. But what happens is as you grow up, then you become, yeah, absolutely. Again, you are one smart girl, Beatrice. Um, when I got older and I got into, I guess, my teenage years, and I saw boys became a thing. Certainly, some of the other things that were probably quite negative around me became a thing too. And I found then getting my attention was really around me doing uh, really rebellious, naughty things. I was a kid that probably around anywhere between maybe 12, 13, 14 and up to probably 16 or 17. I did everything naughty that I could have possibly done. Probably some illegal things, probably many immoral things. And then, of course, I got married very young because someone took notice of me and, showered me with love. And I met my first narcissist. So that is how you become prey to that sort of relationship, I guess. But what happened was I always felt that when I was in, even as up until probably, maybe 10 years ago, whenever I was out and about, and I've managed people, I've worked in positions of what I would see as positions of power and management. And I always felt that people would talk over me, they would disregard me, and sometimes people didn't remember me, which blew me away a little bit. I might have met them 2 or 3 times and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm just about to introduce myself. Who are you?" And I'm like, "We've already met." So I had this feeling that I was invisible. And I remember going, I remember you were that girl too, Jackie. Yeah, get it. I get it. Everybody's relating to me here. I think that this is not a rare problem. Um, it's not a rare problem. I think we've all been through this. This is why we become spiritual. This is why we're empathic. It's all these reasons that bottle us up to make us the people we are. So I started to wonder why I was invisible. And people ignored me. And I started to go into some of the childhood stuff I'd experienced time. I'd somehow neglected to be who I was supposed to be. I'd somehow neglected that little girl inside of me because I'd always tried to please everybody else. And the reason you become invisible is because your true self is not on the surface. You're becoming part of the furniture, you're conforming, and you're doing what you done as a child. So I was still reacting, and hence the emotional stuff. So when we're talking about bringing all the emotions in, that is all part of this. It's all like a dampening down of who you are. Yes, absolutely. It's all about Maria. How you going? Yeah, I get it, and that's why I said we're all here talking about the same things. No, I don't know that it is sad, Lauren. I think that sometimes. That's right, and you put it in the second half of that paragraph. Finding out who we are again, finding out who we truly are underneath, allowing those emotions to flow, and allowing yourself to nurture your inner child, it all becomes part of who we grow into. And even if it's late in life that we start to realize some of this stuff, um, apathetic neglect, yes, absolutely. And as I said, we could talk for hours on this, and it would please me none to sit here and just keep going on and on and on. But what happens is, to avoid upsetting anybody, to avoid making people angry, to avoid conflict, to avoid all of those negative emotions, you make yourself small so nobody can see you, because that way you don't have to deal with the anger and the negativity and whatever else. So I probably started realizing that, as I said, probably about 10 years ago, because I got bullied a lot. I got bullied a lot at home. I got bullied a lot at school. I got bullied a lot at work. And I could never understand why, and in relationships, of course. And I could never understand why I got bullied a lot. And that was a bit of an eye opener for me too, to understand that because I made myself small, I hid all my emotions. People can see that. People can understand that. So you get pushed around because people think that you don't really deserve any more than that. But then I started to realize, hang on a moment. So um, beautiful. See, Lenore, it's amazing, isn't it? So what I started to realize a few years ago was how to express myself. So I remember starting off with the whole, learn to be assertive thing, and started to be assertive. And all I did was come off as a cranky old cow. I did not know how to control that power, of being able to speak my mind. And I made so many people upset with me. And I guess when I look back now, I think, well, here I was, this person who never spoke up, who never said anything, never said boo, and all of a sudden, I'm standing up for myself. So people would be like, "What is wrong with you? What is your problem?" And I was like, I didn't get that either. I was like, okay. It just takes so long to see, because we're not used to looking inside ourselves. We avoid it, Jackie. We avoid it for so long. Who wants to see all? It's that whole, did Beatrix call it before? That apathetic neglect. It's like we just ignore it and hope it goes away. So when I got bullied, I'd go home and I'd think, oh, that was really horrible. Then all the emotions would come back in, and I think, what am I doing wrong? Why do people dislike me? I don't have, and all of those childhood emotions all step back in again, just to remind you of how worthless you are, because that is what you were taught when you were young. That you weren't worth it, you weren't worth paying attention to, you weren't worth being loved. And some of that's our perception too as a child. We want to be loved, we want to be liked, we don't know any different. But if we're taught by our parents that we are good as we are, then that's great too. But sometimes that doesn't work either, because then you're not allowed to fall, which makes it really difficult too. So there's a thing with parenting where we don't get it right, and we may never get it right, but we can love. We can love. We can love with everything we have. So, oh, Susan, that's a beautiful thing to say. Thank you. I enjoy it just as much as you do. I say that all the time. Hi, Moira. How you going? So people don't know how to take the new you. Thanks, Kay. It's so true. Because all of a sudden, you've found this part of yourself. And look, don't get me wrong. I still get bullied. I still get bullied here. I still get bullied at work. People will still try to put one over on you. But now I've seen it differently. Now I see what it is. I always thought bullying was because I was the problem. I was the issue. I was the one who couldn't speak up. I was the one who got it wrong. No, you get bullied because people don't like the power you have. But we don't see it that way, because we're measuring it all through our child experiences. And it's not. People want what you've got. They want that energy. They want your vibration. That's what they want. So they seek you out and they try to suck it out of you, because that's all they know best too. Now, they've come from probably, more than likely, very similar backgrounds. But for some people, instead of working on themselves and developing themselves and having a great understanding of who they are, They don't do that. They want yours. It's easier to take your shit away and pull you down than what it is to invest in themselves. So they pull. So I'll just go back. Oh, Joanne, don't ever be sorry for me. Please, darling, don't ever be sorry for me. Yeah, our dads, our mums, people around us would have told you all of this stuff. And this is all a part of what you are learning now influences your relationships. So for many of you, you would have come out of these situations, you would have found people who just reinforced this for you. And you would have grown up thinking that this is who you are. And you've probably never realized how amazing you truly are. Your love in its purest form. As a child, you were love in its absolute purest form. But then you were influenced by everything around you, your parents, the people that bullied you. You were influenced by all of them until you make yourself so small. That's the only way you know how to exist. And then we start to realize, hey, how you going? Absolutely. And it's, I I think that you're talking about the Akashic Records, Winter. I'm just learning a bit more on that myself. How are you, Misty? Winter, I'm going to come on. I'll do some stuff about the Akashic Records as I'm learning, okay? Because I know all about the Akashic Records. I've accessed them for myself, but I've never really learned to access them for other people, and that's what I want to do. So I can tell people more about what their life is supposed to, what they've put in their record for themselves to learn throughout this lifetime. So we'll talk about that one day. Somebody said to me the other day, I hope you're going to go on doing these afterwards. And I was like, oh my goodness, I love doing this stuff. Okay, so where are we up to? It will be great, and we'll do a session on that. Okay, so we were talking about how you then learn to become small, because somebody said to me that they too felt invisible. And funnily enough, they were the same age as me. So obviously the parenting we had was quite similar. You become small because if you're small and nobody notices you, then you don't have to put up with everybody's crap and, and all the stuff they want to give to you. So you just become small and you hide away. And I remember as a child, sometimes my siblings took gratitude for things I had done, but the moment I did something wrong, somebody was smack down on me and giving me a hard time over it. So I guess then you grow up thinking you're just going to avoid conflict. So your relationships become very toxic. Your family becomes toxic because you are the one always that's just trying to please everybody. Now, I'm not saying that you're great by doing that. I don't want you to think that because we're people pleasers, we're the best and we're wonderful, because we're not. We just make way for people to think they can treat us that way. So we're just feeding them what they need to feel good about themselves. So then they feel good about themselves and then they treat you like that, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. And then you hop out of one relationship thinking, I'm not putting up with that again. That was a horrible piece of work. And you go back into the next relationship exactly the same because you haven't healed yourself. So I think that many of us have done that cycling through relationships. You were definitely that person too. Yeah, I don't think I was. I really think in the ranks of my original family, I have more than one family, but in the ranks of my original family, I think I was considered Cinderella. I always think I was Cinderella. I grew up thinking I was ugly. I grew up thinking I didn't have a brain in my head. I grew up thinking nobody would ever love me. I grew up thinking, and don't feel sorry for me, please, because I always think I talk these things, but I don't want anybody to, there you go. Now, I was hearing the guy on the other day on a YouTube channel. His name is Vishnu, somebody, and I think he does one of those gayer channels. And he was saying that when he was a child, his parents always perceived him as being shy. So every time they introduce him to people, they say, this is our son. Oh, he's very shy. So he grew up thinking he was shy. And he said he wasn't at all. It was just his parents' perception. But because they, thank you. What can I say, Beatrice? You're beautiful. Thank you so much. And look, this strong woman here, still has a little child inside of her, still gets hurt by people, still makes way for people who are, I do the best I can, like you guys. I'm just human, the same as you. I'm still learning. I never get, 100%, but I do now stop myself when I'm thinking of those things, and I do stop myself when I'm feeling those emotions, and I do stop those myself in those times when I think I need to stop. I'm very much the observer now. I very much live in the moment. I've tried really hard to release my past, and I've done a damn fine job of it, if I say so myself. Um, but I'm still learning, and I love to learn. So I have a string of learning behind me because I was invisible. I needed to be smart. So I just kept learning. I just kept thinking, what can I do next? What degree can I get? What certificate can I have? What can I learn next? I was so hungry to try and make myself bigger. And it works with your weight too. I don't know if you have eating problems, but it works with your weight. So it's sort of like, well, if I keep fattening myself up and I'm larger, then people will see me more. So I had a weight problem as well. It goes on and on. It's constantly abusing yourself until you wake up to these things and you go, hang on a moment, I understand what I'm doing now. I understand what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to make a conscious attempt to understand why. And this brings us into the conversation. Vishnu, that's it, from Mind Valley. Yes, he was the one who talked about, how do you solve a problem like Maria? Oh, that's beautiful. Hey, Stacey, how you going? Vishnu, yes, he was the one who said that he thought he was shy. He was shy, and he grew up thinking he was shy, but he wasn't. It was just his parents' perception. The same thing that happens to people when they get told they need to get out more often and have more friends. Why would you want to be alone by yourself? I don't feel alone. I don't feel good by myself. So why should you be happy to be alone? That makes no sense to me. I don't know. Well, I guess because we're all different. We have different ways of doing things. So this brings us around to the concept of the ego. Now, I've got someone here who could chime in beautifully with this because I know she's been doing, you relate to the eating disorder. Exactly. A lot of this stuff, these emotions, these thoughts about yourself, these perceptions, these ideas of who you are, have all been created for you. They've been created by your family. They've been created by your friends. They've been created by your teachers, your bosses. All of these images of who you are have all been created externally. So when you get to a certain point in your life, you go, hang on a moment, who am I? Because these ideas, these thoughts, these things that I feel, do, see, whatever, are maybe not my own. And all of a sudden you realize underneath all of that stuff, and it sometimes takes people to recognize that in you. And the people that are going to recognize it are the people who are mirroring it to you or mirroring it back to themselves. So there's probably not a person here who isn't mirroring for me today. And I guess I'm mirroring for you too. There you go, Sarah. I get it. I really do. That makes me want to cry because we're so desperate to be seen, so desperate to be noticed, so desperate to be loved that all we try to do is validate ourselves to others. Why? We're already that beautiful being. We just want other people to see how beautiful we are. And that is really difficult. So when you get to the point where you are understanding that concept, then you truly can release that ego. And although the ego becomes something that's part of you, and you need to have an ego, you need to have an ego to go to work and and be around other people. You need to have an ego. Have an ego. We all have an ego, but it needs to be healthy. It can't be unhealthy. You can't present to the world the idea of who you are. You need to present to the world who you truly are. And if that causes conflict and it's a risk, so be it. Anyway, I better go. I've talked for way too long. Programmed is exactly the right word, Kay. Absolutely. And we're still being programmed by the people around us, all of those. Oh, you're looking into the Titanic, the symbolism. When you start to see the symbolism, it's everywhere. It wakes you up. You see people's ideas, thoughts, feelings everywhere. but just the way that they portray them. Anyway, you're doing a David Cassidy thing. I hope that you all got something out of our little conversation today. Oh, thank you, Joanne. My love from, oh my goodness. Oh, don't. I will start crying. I really will. My emotions are always like there now. I don't have to hide them away anymore. So I'm all good with that. Thank you, Lauren. It's lovely to see you too. Sarah, you'll get there. How are you going now with it though? I'm waiting for you to answer. Because I eventually got my weight stable. I'm still probably a fair bit overweight if in terms of how I should weigh, but I eat everything I want now. I don't try to control the eating anymore. Like everything else, I'm like, que sera, sera. What will be, will be. Okay, have a wonderful day, all of you. I love each and every one of you. Do not stop to question how beautiful you are. You know it already. Good girl. Well done, Sarah. Good. And that's the way you have to be. As long as you're healthy emotionally and spiritually, that's all that counts. Everything else falls into place after that. You've just got to let go of trying to control everything. And you know what? Some of us control our weight because we feel that's all we've got to control. So have a wonderful day. Take care. I've been on for 40 minutes. Holy dooly. Where did that go? Much love to you all. Mwah.